Hi, and welcome to another edition of Seattle City Club Civically Speaking. I'm Alicia Crank, and today I have one of our gubernatorial candidates that we're going to chat with today, Chaytan Inman. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good. Well, thanks for again taking time to come out and talk to me about your campaigns. I've just been really interested in a lot of the things that you've been posting. And I know there's like 30 people running, and some people were saying to me, it's going to be so many people. Are you going to talk to everybody? The answer is no. But I am at the same time, I feel like there are certain folks that we should make sure that we're giving some attention to and a platform to talk about what they're doing. And at City Club, one of the things we just recently did, we just launched our Civically Engaged Youth Council, which is geared for those kind of 15 to 24 years old to get them more civically engaged, not necessarily politically, but involved. And so I think the Gen Z voice, at least right now, is really striving to be heard and to be led. And I feel like you're in that group of people, and that's why you're running for office. So I don't want to put words in your mouth. Tell us more about who you are and why you're running.
Yeah, my name is Chaytan. I'm 22. I am currently a student at the University of Washington, and I am running because the politicians that we have not made noticeable change on environmental catastrophes that are weighing on our generation. And when I was feeling the weight of this for years. And it started when in high school, I was I had just gotten my license. I was starting to go out and explore more and hike more. And then the Columbia Gorge burned down. And suddenly it seemed like every September was a month of smoke. And it's unimaginable. The sky is dark and the sun is red, and it's incredibly sad. And this weight has been with me for a long time, and I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about what can I do, and then somebody mentioned the governor's race, and I was like, well, I can do that. But more than that, I can dive deeper into this later. The policies that are being suggested and enacted, even in Washington, where we've had progressive, climate-forward politicians that really do care about this issue, they're just simply not working. So it's not just that I'm trying to raise awareness for the issue. It's that we're thinking about this in a fundamentally wrong way. And I can absolutely talk more about that later. But
absolutely,
that is why I'm running.
So before we dig more into that, because I know there's a lot to cover there, I want to go back to your being on UW's campus. And of course, can't really talk about that without talking about what's happening on campus, especially with the protests that are happening. Can you talk more about, as a student, what that experience has been for you? Because there's a lot of news out there. There's a lot of I don't want to say rhetoric, but there's a lot of discussions on multiple sides, going from, most of the people that are there are not even students at the university per se. And, what is the student population doing? So as a student there, what is your experience? What are you experiencing right now on campus? And are you involved in it at all?
Yeah, I am involved in the encampment, and I have sort of attended. They're not protests per se. Two rallies, and I also have a tent. But I'm not the best speaker for the movement, so I won't say anything that is speaking to that. I would prefer that the Palestinian students on campus have that voice. But just my experience is that I think the things are very tense. And I think generally the coverage in the national media is very poor because they aren't here and they don't experience things. So they'll say that there's a lot of anti-Semitism. Well, I've been here a week and I haven't heard anybody say anything anti-Semitic. There's a lot of Jewish students that are in the encampment. It's at least at the University of Washington, the focus is free Palestine. That's the thing that we chant most often. It's for me, there's a sign on my tent that says, I just think that genocide is bad. I don't care if you're killing Arab people or Israelites. It's wrong to kill civilians. So that's what I believe. And that's why I'm supporting it. But yeah, that's what's going on at UW right now. It's very tense, but it seems that there might be a voluntary decampment if our demands are met. That's very new news at the time of this recording, though. So we'll see.
Okay. And then also, as in your time at UW, as you're getting ready to graduate, sound like you've done a couple of cool things as well, as far as founding this research group. Talk about interactive intelligence. I keep wanting to put so I'm gonna stop doing that. But talk more about that, because I found it intriguing that it's the first undergraduate research group.
Yeah, I would actually love to talk about that because, so when I was in high school, I did robotics and I found a community through that, and I really believed in technology very deeply, and I was like, oh, technology can just solve all of our problems. And so when I got to the University of Washington, I was going to study artificial intelligence because I thought that had the potential to impact the world very deeply, but there wasn't a whole lot of ways to study it. When I got here, there was very few deep learning classes at all. And so I decided that I would just make a group. And we did that. And there was a lot of other people that also wanted to study it. So we quickly formed, but really the core question that we started with was, what is intelligence? And it's a really deep question, and it's really interesting because it's not just a question of, are computers intelligent and are humans intelligent? It's also, how should we treat other beings in the world? And one of the things that I've really found in thinking about this question for a very long time through this community is that whether it's in computer science or in society or in politics, you need diversity for intelligence. It's a fundamental. So the easiest example for computer scientists to grasp is that you need a lot of different data to train an algorithm that works really well. If you have data just from one specific kind of person, the minute you try to use your program in a different context, it breaks. And the same thing we see in society. If you only have input from a few people, society also breaks when you try to govern people that don't belong to that constituency. So yeah, it's been quite a journey. It's very fun to create a little community on campus, and yeah.
So let's talk about governing people, since you're running for governor. So my first question to you, and I think a lot of people are like, what is driving you to pursue this office? I mean, there's a lot of different elected roles or even appointed roles that you could start with, especially when people talk about climate or earth. I served on a planning board for several years. What made you go, okay, I'm going to start at this level? Like, what did that for you?
Well, I don't want to be a politician at all. It's kind of like chewing nails for me, doing all of this like public speaking. But I was thinking, what can I do to help the earth and help people? And this is what I can do. So I need to stop feeling helpless and just do it. So I don't want to be a career politician. So I didn't start at a smaller office because that would commit me for life. And I also think that the policies that I would most like to affect and the conversations I would most like to create can happen at the the gubernatorial level.
Are you finding that starting to happen? Because I was thinking about one of the podcasts I heard you speak on. And they say you don't want to run, but it feels like you have to because the elders have failed your generation. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean more of, there's a lot of people that say, "What?" Not a lot of people use the word elder, or or when you say your generation. I think that we want to get rid of any of the assumptions of what that means. So when you refer to your elders, who are you speaking of? And when you talk about your generation, are you talking Gen Z specifically, or any particular, a widening of that group?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the point of this, I think I probably use the word elders because, I respect people that are older than me and knowledge that they have. So maybe that's why I chose that word. But the point of the statement, I'm not trying to point fingers, but I am. I'm just stating the situation. I was born in 2001, and I was at that point, the Earth had already started warming, and we already knew about climate change since the 80s. And we've already built highways and built roads and structured our society around burning fossil fuels and growing the economy. The only thing we cared about was growing the GDP since, you could say since the end of World War II, or you could say since the 80s and neoliberalism. It doesn't matter. This structure of pursuing growth above all else, above the well-being of people, above the economic collapses that we've seen repeatedly through the recession and the oil crises, et cetera, or through the environmental costs. That structure is what we've been left with. And that is how my generation has been failed. And we've known it's a disaster for such a long time. But on the other hand, it's not, this is what I was born into. And it might not be fair, but that doesn't mean I get to quit. That doesn't mean I get to give up, because then I'm failing the next generation. And then I'm repeating the same mistakes that people have already made. And so I would like to learn,
And of course, there are going to be some people that will hear this and say, well, is that the way you start learning, is with this level of office and responsibility, even if they feel like you don't have that great of a chance of advancing? So that leads me into my next statement, which is like, so who are you? And I asked that because, when I went on your site and a few others went on, you go to the About page, and like you said, you don't want to be a politician. That's not who you're trying to be. But usually when you go to a candidate's page and you see about, they're talking about how they grew up and their families and this and that and the other. But if their hobby, what do they do? Yours does not do that. You go straight into what it is that you want to. Which again, I don't think that's a bad thing, but it doesn't leave people going, well, who is this person that wants me to listen to them, let alone vote for them? So who are you, and who is your audience, other than the state as a whole? But who is it that you're hoping to engage with the most, so that once this is done on whatever level, that they're still impacted by your mission, but they're impacted by your platform?
Yeah. Okay, I'll start with the second question. The first question is much more complicated, I feel like. Who's my audience? I want to unravel this myth that we can somehow continue to grow infinitely our economy. Every time we grow our GDP, that's a material resource from the earth. There is no way to outconsume overconsumption. And that is the fundamental problem with our policies that we've implemented against climate change. So to give you just a quick example of the scope of the problem is like, we've had Jay Inslee as governor for 12 years, and he's been trying to implement all of the policy recommendations that he can to fight climate change. And the result of that is that during that time, Washington fossil fuel use has increased. So what's happening is we're on a treadmill, and the treadmill is getting faster, and we can only run so fast. We can only build renewables so fast. But if our energy demands keep increasing at a faster rate, we're losing the battle. So who is my audience? My audience is anybody who believes that we can just outconsume overconsumption. We have to start by acknowledging that we have enough resources. We don't need to keep growing. We can distribute those resources more fairly, and we can all be more prosperous in that way. And that in itself can be brought about by giving rights to the earth, which is my main platform. That's what I care about the most, because we can't keep playing by the rules of the game, like taxes that companies can easily evade. We have to change something more fundamental than that. The second part of your question, or the first part that I didn't answer yet, is I don't know. I like to play guitar. I like to play drums. I write poems sometimes. I'm gonna be a wildland firefighter this summer, and I care about the earth a lot. I care about people a lot. I love my 2 dogs.
Mm-hmm. What kind of dogs?
Pomeranians. They're awful nuisances, but I love them anyway. They bark at everything.
Well, obviously, your platform is really centered around, climate and earth, and so I'm curious to also know too, who are you seeing support coming from, or who are you seeking support from? Because the first 2 groups I think about is Sierra Club, or the conservation voters, all these other different types of groups that are kind of focused around those same things. Have there been any conversations with any of them? Have any of them reached out to you? Do you want them to reach out to you?
I would love to talk to anybody who's interested in my platform. But I think that this is not a partisan issue. So that's why it's tricky. But who am I seeing support from? I see a lot of support from my student community around me. I think that a lot of people in my generation feel very disillusioned, and it seems very difficult to get my generation to stop being so resigned, because we've just been normalized. The concept that the world is collapsing has been normalized. We lived through COVID, and that we didn't just live through COVID. We grew up during COVID. We grew up during times of immense change where technology bursts onto the scene, and then suddenly there's mental health issues, and then there's COVID, and now there's globalization, supply chain issues every other week, and it's a lot. And it's very difficult to get people to care, because it's so regular. I've lost my train of thought a little bit.
That's okay. I'm going to give you a final thought, though, for you to leave with everybody. So I have your website up for people to go back and learn more about you. So as a final word, what do you want to leave with people listening to this today? How would you propose, or how would you suggest that people get more civically involved, whether it's around, or especially around the platform that you've already talked about?
Yeah.
I mean, how can someone who's not, maybe there's someone that say, oh, I don't necessarily want to vote for him, but I like what he's talking about, and I need to figure out how to get more involved in what's going on with climate and the earth and fire. How can someone that's listening to you today go about doing that maybe they don't already know how to do?
Okay. I will say this, and it will sound so trivial and silly, but it's so not. I think that people need to garden. I think so. If you're in the situation that you just described to me, where somebody says, "Okay, well, I kind of resonate with that, and I kind of care about that, but I don't really know what I can do." I mean, there's so many things you can do. I could tell you to go be an activist. I could tell you to go join a group and protest, and those are good things. But I think we're in a situation where, even if you care about climate change, you still have to go work and make money, and that corporation probably doesn't care about climate change, and they're probably the source of a huge amount of emissions. So what are you going to do about that? Well, what we need to do about that is we need to find a way to become independent. And the way that you can become independent is by slowly chipping away at the distance that has been put between people and their basic needs. So if people have more access to food and clean water and housing, then that's how we can take away the power from corporations that we work for that don't care about the climate. So one of the easiest things that you can do is just start a garden, grow food, and get more people closer to the things that they need to survive, and make it free and available to people, and build a community around it. It's so fundamental. Food and water and housing and community is so fundamental to just being a human in a world that's been corporatized. And I think that is extremely important for starting to have a world that's actually sustainable. But again, since I haven't given my whole spiel about it yet, giving the earth rights is my main platform, and I think that is also a very good thing to advocate for.
Absolutely. Chaytan, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I have definitely learned some things. I am going to take your challenge and figure out something to garden.
Awesome.
And what is an but for those of us that have a brown thumb, literally or figuratively, what is the easiest thing to start with to feel a level of success?
It depends how much sun you have. Do you have a fair amount of sun?
I only get late afternoon sun.
Okay. If you have, I would say tomatoes are pretty good if you can get a fair amount of sun. If you can't get a whole lot of sun, it's going to be difficult to grow a lot of vegetables, but potatoes will grow like weeds usually. So you could definitely shove some of those in the ground and they'll probably take off.
All right, I'm going to start with potatoes, and you have to keep me honest and check back in with me.
Okay.
For a
I can do that.
report. So again, everyone, thank you for listening to Civically Speaking with Seattle City Club. Chaytan's website is up on our site right now, and I look forward to the next conversation we're going to be having. So thanks so much, and everyone have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.